Becoming you beyond deconstruction, because deconstruction isn't the end goal. Living a vibrant, soul-aligned life is. Okay, so I am really excited as usual to be here in another episode of Becoming, and today I'm especially excited because I've got a dear personal friend, a real life friend that I happened to meet online, Joanna Oliver. I invited Joanna on because she's actually been somebody who has been so inspirational in my life as somebody, as a slightly older woman. As a slightly older woman, somebody who is within physical touching distance, because I do feel that makes a difference, and who's also supported me navigating some of my own stuff. So welcome, Jo. Welcome to Becoming.
Thank you, Florence. It's lovely to be here. When you said, will you come on? It's time, isn't it? I think it's been a while since we've kind of done something like this where we've engaged in a conversation. So I think, it's overdue. Great.
Okay, so fantastic. I already know that it's going to be such a beautiful conversation. And I've spoken to you a little bit about what it's about and why I'm doing this. But just for people that don't know you and who are just taking my word for it, can you just share a little bit about who you are and what you do, what you're about?
Sure. So my name's Jo, as you said, Joanna Oliver. I self-identify as a chameleon, and I guess that's the best place to start because then it makes sense of the rest of it, in my opinion. I'm a mum of three. My youngest is 8, my menopause baby, and she's home educated. I have a really diverse professional background. And this has led me into this kind of chameleonic space where I've kind of joined or merged, if you like, academia, and my professional experience as a lecturer, as a trainer, as a strategy kind of manager, as a bid writer, the ghostwriter, proofreader, editor. I do lots of different things. So it's kind of a bit of a list, but when I really think about it, because I mentor people as well, when I really think about it, what's at the core of that is the essence of people's growth. So this notion of becoming is really attractive to me. This kind of delayering, becoming what we already are. I believe that we already are when we're born, maybe even before we're born. And then life takes us into these spaces. And adds layers to us that we then, and I guess that's the deconstructing bit, we then have to kind of throw off over the years. We need to understand why they're there, what they're about, and decide to let go of them. So I've developed different programs. One of them, which I know I've done a little bit of work with you, not you personally, but within your professional space, which is Grow Free from Shackles, which is all about kind of that delayering process. What's that all about? What messages are we listening to? What voices are there? Where do they come from? What purpose are they serving? Are they really in alignment with who we are today or where we want to be? And then kind of moving on from that, because the kind of, if I think about the chameleonic brand, the strapline is grow your colours. So there's a whole sense of kind of living your life in the magnificence of Technicolor. So there's another program actually that I'm delivering. I was just in a conversation yesterday as a follow-on from a program that I ran, I think last year, the Grow Free from Shackles, which is Grow Your Colours. So again, that'll be with women of colour, black and brown women, if you like. And that's, kind of how do we utilise that learning from growing free from shackles to then step into our power base, step into our magnificence, and be who we are. Yeah. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So there's a lot there, and I want people to know where they can get in contact with you. So if we kind of talk about that maybe at the end, so they can find out more about those programs if they feel like they want to. But I think you touched upon quite a few things there. This kind of universal experience that we have of being conditioned or being put onto. Can you talk a little bit about where you think that comes from, why you think that is, and maybe your personal experience of that? I know it's a big question.
Yeah, it is a big question, but it's sort of, I like to think that things are simple yet complex. Yeah. So I think it's a big question. I think if I begin with myself, very early on in my life, and this was really due to the fact that I'm of mixed race parentage and I grew up in a white environment, family-wise, but also community and socially, at a time when we didn't have the internet, so there was no sense of a bigger picture out there. I was asked on a fairly regular basis, it feels like now that I look back on it, how I saw myself. How do you see yourself? And I knew early on that meant, do you see yourself as black or white? I also learned that how I responded to that question would determine what happened next. So in that environment, probably the safest thing to say would have been to say that I saw myself as white. Because I guess, people, it's about people's acceptance, isn't it? So I quickly learned to be sophisticated in that response. I don't ever remember saying that I saw myself as white. I can't say for sure that I never did. I certainly never saw myself as white. I certainly was explicitly clear and reminded of my otherness. So I would say that experience was the turning point that I would reflect back upon, that gave me a message about identity and about the influence of other people upon that identity. Now, over the course of many years, academically and personally and professionally, I've explored identity. So it's kind of something that I can speak about quite straightforwardly. And what I actually believe is that there's a portion of our identity that belongs to the others, society, community, whoever, people we don't even know. And then there's a part of our identity that's ours. And it's the part of our identity that's ours that I think that we cherish, nurture, grow, and helps us to then de-layer some of that other stuff. That's kind of the true essence of us, I guess, you would say. And I'm definitely not talking from a Christian perspective when I say that. This is because this has been a very, very much an experiential journey. My core belief is that the world starts within. If I've got lots of little sayings, but if someone were to say, what's the one that kind of defines you, that would be it. The world starts within. So therefore, for me, our identity, irrespective of what other people want to place on us, what messages we've received, begins within. And of course, we do, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we do internalize those messages from other people. And for me, that delayering, that's why it has to be deep work, because that delayering is kind of a process of saying, which bit of this is my core essence and which bit of this have I inherited? On a positive note, which bit of this have I assimilated? Because definitely for me, in taking this journey from being, talking racially now and culturally, from a white environment to a white English environment to a more of a kind of mixed, multicultural, Black, African Caribbean environment, I've definitely assimilated certain, and not just behaviours, but rituals as well. So simple things like washing my meat and rinsing my plates. Didn't grow up with those, but I've assimilated that. Right. So I think, these all kind of then start to define us. And I guess the more people start to see who we are, the more they then add new labels to us. So the labels I'm sure that people will associate with me now that I've assimilated certain things will be different to before, because I'm sure in the early days when they thought, what's she doing? She hasn't rinsed her plates. The association of me would be different, right? So I think, yeah, that's fundamentally, I would say that we receive these messages, we learn consciously and otherwise how to navigate this world, don't we? How to keep ourselves safe. As human beings, you know, our kind of core, at our core is survival.
Yeah.
So how have we learned to survive in this world?
Yeah.
And how have those messages helped us to navigate this world?
And
yeah,
in a sense, I am picking up this kind of idea that I know sometimes we can fight against the fact that we have taken on these identities, and there can be maybe some kind of bitterness, anger, resentment about that. But at some level, I think it's also important to recognise that they did keep us safe, and to kind of to honour that and be grateful for it, because it is a journey and it's a process, and we were still learning, we were still growing, and we were still becoming in that. And I laugh at your example of rinsing plates, because some people may not know, to be like, what the hell is she talking about, rinsing plates? But you have to be black, in a sense, to get it, because that's something that, you know, you might watch a movie where after dinner, a white family are doing the washing up, and they'll take it out of the soapy water and they'll put it on the side, and that is just typical stereotype. That's just what white people do. So I can totally understand that if somebody witnessed you doing that, they would automatically label you because you don't fit into the black culture, because you don't know that insider information that this is what black families do, right? And it's so weird, because I'm black African heritage, and, you know, you've spoken about black Caribbean, but, you know, it just seems like somehow we picked up that simple ritual. But even then, and I'm sure maybe you can relate, sometimes it's not enough for other people that you still, maybe whether you self-identify or whether they see you do certain things, it's not enough. You still haven't ticked all the boxes for them. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know we're referencing race a lot, and that's totally fine if that's what you feel comfortable using as examples. And I'm sure people can, you know, relate it back to their own experiences outside of race or including race. But yeah.
So I guess, and just to touch on that, I think that, the race is a big part of our existence and our identity, I feel. And I feel that, you know, no matter what people want to say, colour is seen first, you know, and we talk about intersectionality. And I look at this a lot from kind of professional and academic points of view, you know, about intersectionality. But actually, colour is seen first. So I think that it is a fundamental aspect of our identity, particularly the identity that all the parts of us that belong to other people, because it's a physical, visible aspect of ourselves. It's not hidden, it's not private, it's not experiential. It is experiential, but it's not purely experiential behind the scenes. It's a public part of us. So, yeah, absolutely. I, in terms of people accepting, I've given up, trying to. I don't. To be honest, Florence, I think I've got to the point now. Maybe it's age. I don't know. I came to this point quite a while ago in my journey, actually, because I think in my 20s, possibly 30s, it was really important to me that people accepted me in the way that I identified. So the way I identify is I'm a black woman of mixed race parentage. My parents are mixed, they mixed and produced me. And then I have my own separate identity, which is related to my experience. And so I know already that there's lots of people that would disagree with that. You know, why can't you just own your identity? Well, I'm owning it through my parentage, is how I see that. I know that there's people that, well, gosh, especially again in the early days, all sorts of projections around, you know, what you might think of yourself, what I might think of myself as a mixed race woman, Now, bearing in mind that I grew up in a white environment, I was dark-skinned where I grew up, if you look at it kind of relatively. So the notion of fair skin, good hair, all of that stuff was not in my experience. I've
Didn't
never heard of
exist, yeah.
it. Didn't exist. Like, what's this? What are you talking about? So when I first went to university in Bournemouth, and then especially when I came to London, you know, I remember sitting in a cab. I used to live in Tottenham when I first came to London. I remember sitting in a cab with the cab driver. I don't know what we were talking about. I don't know what I said. I'd have been mid-20s, so I probably was chatting all sorts of whatever. And he said, "Oh, he's only for make a browning." He said to me, "I buy it." And I find that funny now. At the time, I was offended. Like, what do you mean? But all sorts. But definitely that kind of projection that, oh, you think you're all that, or you think something of yourself beyond. And I was like, that was probably the most challenging part to delayer and navigate, because that wasn't my experience. I wasn't made to feel that I had fair anything or good anything. I was made to feel the complete opposite. So within my lived experience, and bearing in mind, as I say, no internet, no world outside of that, apart from TV, which was quite dire in the 70s and 80s in terms of stereotypes and messages.
Really bad.
There was nothing to tell me anything about, I thought I was all that. It was completely the opposite. So that was an interesting thing, being treated as if you do when you completely don't. That was very interesting, and it was also very insightful. I think you're right. My view just on the becoming is that we're always becoming. I'm still becoming. I'll be becoming. Hopefully, I'll continue to become until I leave this plane and go wherever it is that we go. And then maybe, I don't know, I might becoming something else. Who knows? But I think that is that's fire to me. That's fuel, that notion that we're always becoming. So I don't know. In my 20s, I thought I knew it. Iyanla Vanzant talks about this, and I thought, well, this is interesting because I've said this. I've said this, Iyanla, as well. In my 20s, I thought I knew it. 30s, I thought I knew it. 40s, I think. In my 50s now, of course I know it. But then what I know is that I don't know it. And that's the difference. That's the difference in the journey for me. And it's quite a liberating knowing. Yeah, it's quite liberating because it keeps that kind of joyfulness, almost playfulness with what life is. You know, there are givens. People will not accept us as we see ourselves. People will project. People will assume. People will embrace. For me, it's about our sense of okayness, isn't it? Or not okayness.
Yeah. And I think there you're kind of touching back to that core essence aspect of ourselves. And I know within, you know, psychotherapy, I know that you're very familiar with, and we've spoken about it. This is really the realm of ego, isn't it? And doing that kind of ego strengthening work. The fragility, I think, of the ego that we see is quite a lot in society. And I think also what kind of adds to that is how the ego is misunderstood, the purpose, the role of the ego is misunderstood, so that we don't treat it gently and softly and tenderly and with love and care and compassion. It's like, you know, you're speaking too loud, go away, or, you know, you're just whatever kind of, all the negative stuff that we absorb from society, we kind of lump it, throw it at it, which does so much more harm when you think about it. Can you speak into that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of my favourites, I think. So I've had many debates publicly sometimes. I've embarrassed myself, actually, with this notion of ego and attachment. And, you know, really, I remember going to a retreat and the guy talking about attachment and me getting a bit ahead of myself and say, oh, what do you mean, you know? Because I have children, so it's like, of course, attachment's important, you know. But from certain perspectives, it's like we don't have attachments, and I'm like, no, I can't go with that. Just as an aside, but I guess it's not really, because all of these things are connected, aren't they? But in terms of Freud's theory, I think I teach Freud's personality theory. I love aspects of what I think. Freud wasn't allowed to speak from his eye because of the time. I think if Freud were alive today, he would be magnificent. I think he had to fit a certain doctrine. He had to be that person. But actually, when you listen and when you look at what he's talking about, transference and countertransference, what on earth, at that time. So I think he managed to share some stuff that has left a beautiful legacy for people like us at a time when he shouldn't have been allowed to talk about that stuff, but he did. He found a way. So yeah, hats off to Freud.
Kudos, yes.
Irrespective of what some people say about the way he spoke, he was of a time.
Yeah.
The language was the language, so we can't. But personality theory, I share that in a very informal way in group sessions with people. I've shared it with young people, and they've understood it perfectly. So the fact that I learned that when I was studying for my first master's degree is irrespective, right? Yes, I learned it to a level, to a depth. So, yeah, the layman's term, the street term, if you want to call it, for ego is, avoid your ego at all costs. You mustn't, thou shalt not have an ego. Let's not show it. It's a bad thing to show. You need to keep it under wraps. You need to keep it down. But in the therapeutic world, and I used to work in therapeutic communities, and the statement that was used was, this is in the 90s, the statement that was used was, the young person needs ego strengthening. And what that means and what that meant was, and I didn't then, this is before I studied, so I just used to hear it being said and kind of made sense of it as I listened to the experts talking about it. But what I took it to mean was that person needs to be able to regulate themselves. So when I look at Freud's personality theory, I place it in a particular way. So you've got superego on one side, the inner parent, those messages about you from people, from your community, from your, the cultural norms, whatever it is, your religion, culture, blah, 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 telling you how you should be, all those shoulds that I always say need to go in the bin. And then you've got the id on the other side, so they're up here. The id is our compulsion, our kind of natural way, if you like, our kind of the child that will kind of touch that because it's attractive to touch. And then we know that the superego, you mustn't be touching that because if you touch that, you're a bad person. But then the ego will step in, won't it, and hold. So if I align that with other theory, and there's so many different theories that if we overlay them, they all link in one way or another. But if I kind of draw on some Gestalt psychotherapy for a minute, the ego for me sits within where our firm ground is. It's our regulator. It's the one that's sitting in between, looking up almost at the id and the superego and saying, well, hold on a second, let's just take a moment. Actually, are you a bad person for touching that button? Or is that just an old message that you're playing there? So I quite like looking at it from that point of view. It's a very simple way of looking at it. And I'm sure Freud wouldn't mind. And obviously all of this is happening in a very quick way. Ideally, once we have integrated that, it's happening in a very quick way. We're not sitting back and kind of navel gazing all day. Who's got time, and that's, for me, the important of being reflective and being reflexive in the moment. Now, I didn't learn about reflexivity until, 1998, I graduated with the therapeutic work masters. We're going 15 years later that I learned about reflexivity through I ended up with a master's in education as well. But I was supervised by a guy who was a psychotherapist, and he used to talk about reflexivity a lot. Beyond fragments, he used to talk about fragments of us, which really spoke into, because I definitely had learnt to compartmentalise my identity. They talk about code switching now. For me, that's all part of the chameleonic identity, being different in different spaces, but kind of still trying to keep a hold of your core identity. Yeah. So that kind of notion of reflexivity and knowing things and feeling things in the moment and processing in the moment, even if what you're doing is processing and saying there's something going on there for me in my belly, not quite sure what it is, can't deal with it now because I'm in a moment, but I will revisit it later. That is for me a really crucial aspect that we don't always learn to develop. Like, we don't have to be reactive all the time. We can take something away, not ignore it, acknowledge it, and take it away and look at it later.
And I think that because society is so fast, and I actually don't believe it's human beings are so fast. I feel that we've learned to become so fast, because back in the day, if we kind of take it back to Paleolithic hunter-gatherer times, okay, yes, you might have had to at times make really quick decisions, but the pace of life, even if we don't even go back that far, even if we go back to like agricultural and farming times, to be in tune with seasons, we weren't like waking up in the morning, rushing to do this and rushing to do that, rushing to do it. There was a cycle, there was a pattern, there was a connection, there was space. But I feel like in modern society, because the shift, the purpose, the focus of being alive has changed, right? It's no longer for you to sustain, nurture, nourish, create life. It's now for, quote unquote, the man, the system. Yeah, it's to be a functioning citizen of a society, to go out in the morning to slog and do work in a particular way, bring home the money and say, thank you very much for giving me the money for me to continue to save and work all day. And there's never a moment, especially, and I know that you can relate because you've been in education, and people who have done that kind of very, very intensive work where you don't have a moment to stop, breathe and think, yet you are called to be a reflective practitioner. Don't know how that works, but there you go. It's like the system is kind of designed in a way to not allow you to connect with yourself, not give you the space to come back to it later. Instead, what they offer is numbing through food, TV, social media, now, all these ways, whilst continuously feeding us the dream, the life, the goal, whatever it is. Thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, look, again, Florence, really, really good questions, because this is like, and this is the flow, isn't it? Because I'm like, yes, absolutely, smiling. I mean, look, and I think this kind of would be the crossover aspect into religion.
Okay, let's go there.
Because so first of all, I'm on a mission to ditch the clock. I've started writing a book called Ditch the Clock.
Yeah.
Right, I've been saying it I use it as a hashtag, but it's actually a book. It's Ditch the Clock, and it's about exactly what you said, right? I did actually write a creative piece for something recently, which was around two women sitting around a fire, talking about the bringers of the light. The bringers of the light, and actually the bringers of the light was electricity. So one of the women had been into the village that morning and heard people talking about the bringers of the light and getting excited about the bringers of the light, because that would mean that, or it's called the false light actually. What that would mean would be that we could do more, we would have more, we could have more time, we'd have extended days, we'd have this, we'd have that. But actually, one of the women, which I guess was my voice more, was saying, that there was thinking that there was a concern about that, because does it mean more? What about being able to get up in the morning with the sunrise? What about being able to catch that part of the day? What about the walk into the village before the sun gets too hot? What about getting enough sleep? What about our body rejuvenating itself whilst we sleep? What about the purpose of the campfire at night, for telling stories, for connecting, for understanding each other, for just observing each other and sitting in silence and feeling all the feels? What about that? And the way that that's lost. What about what happens to our health and our eyes because we are working under the false light, right? Beyond the time that we're supposed to as humans and whatever. So for me, this is quite fundamental stuff, and it's back to nature, as you say. It's back to, I'm a fan of moon cycles, so I follow moon cycles. I'm not an astrologist, and actually, I had a thought about this morning. I didn't expect to be talking about it now, because I was listening to something about the full moon, which is today, and I was thinking about, I'm definitely not an astrologist, because that's too technical for me. I'm not a technical person. I'm like, what was that again? That plus that equals what? But I get it at a feelings level, an empathic level. So I often will know something. This sounds really weird. It's not meant to be. I often will know something before. So, for instance, I've been feeling a particular way, but didn't watch a video until this morning that has made sense. Right, that's because of this. And I knew that there was a full moon today, which is why I watched the video. But I kind of thought, that's what that is, all about the wounded healer. Then I kind of thought, well, this is interesting, because I went to see Woman King on Friday, the Woman King, and that was really interesting to me. I know there's a lot of controversy about it. I'm not tuning into that. It was a really powerful film to watch for all sorts of reasons. And what was interesting for me about that was there was a nod towards the wounded self within that film. And I thought, is it a coincidence that it came out the other day? Or, because I believe that, if we know it as little us sitting in our little spaces, it's known that the bigger story is out there. It's just that, just like with technology, we're not kind of fed certain things before we're allowed to be fed it, although we can know it, can't we? So for me, there's a lot in astrology, there's a lot in moon cycles, there's a lot in the elements. I'm fully engaged with, water, air, fire, earth, energy, and how that links to astrology. And I think that, I don't think I know this, because I've had texts sent to me before, and people say to me, oh, be careful with that. Oh, I saw you reference the third eye the other day, be careful about that. I'm like, I'm not going to be careful. I don't feel the need to be careful, because since I was a child, I've wanted to switch off that other eye. I don't now, but as a child, it was a lot, because I saw so much. It was overwhelming. So there was a part of me that wanted to switch it off. Now, as a grown woman, I'm so happy to have that capacity, that additional capacity. It's like having an extra storage drive in your system.
I love it.
I love it. I love it. But I know, and so the people that will tell me to be careful and will text me and this, that, and the other are people that are Christians in particular. And so I know that there's I get asked sometimes very definite questions about, are you a Christian? Well, I'm like, because I don't not believe. Do I believe what you believe? Do I believe it in the way that you believe it? Was I taught it in the way that you've been taught it? Have I interpreted it in the way that you've interpreted it? That is where it lies for me. And I think so that is a big part of it. But there are some people, and it happened to me recently. I'm going to say it happened to me recently because I remember having to take a little moment. I'd had a brilliant evening out, and somebody asked me the question. I was amongst Christians who are friends of mine, I love dearly. And I was asked the question by someone, are you a Christian? And I'm like, it's not an it's a yes or a no.
Oh, wow.
I know
really?
that it's an Yeah, I know it's an because I know that my answer is not befitting. So I kind of went, well, it doesn't depend, it's a yes or a no. And it was, so I said, well, look, I basically declined to answer because I knew that it wasn't a yes or a no for me in the way that they wanted to hear the yes or no. But I also did feel in some aspects of that, there was eyes on me that was like, yeah, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? There was a bit of that. And again, not in a bad way. I think because it's quite contentious, I feel that I'm big enough to be able to cope with it. So it was fine. I might not have been big enough to cope with it, though. I might have still been in transition, I might have felt like, oh my gosh, I'm being judged. What's going to happen to me? I'm not only being judged humanly, but am I being judged spiritually? What's going to happen to me? So there could have been a bit of that, but there wasn't. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to have a one-to-one with the questioner, because I dropped them home after we got off the train, and I was able to kind of say, look, let me give you some context as to why I didn't answer the question in the way that you wanted me to. And I gave the context, and they gave their response, which was, do you believe in Jesus Christ, was died and rose again, and all of that narrative that is kind of, unless you do, you're not Christian type of thing. And I, and I kind of, again, just kind of left that as where it was, because I understand it, and I'm not kind of gonna, I can't lie, basically. So I'm averse to fakery and lies and pretense. So I couldn't just give an answer that was pleasing to someone else. Those days are gone for me. My please you driver has diminished quite significantly over the years. So it was like I couldn't just give an answer that I knew would be pleasing to the group that I was with. It had to be an answer that was congruent for me. And therefore, in that moment, the answer was a non-answer. Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who might feel less secure if they were in that position? I mean, what would you say to somebody to maybe help them feel more able, more supportive in getting to a place where they could be that way? What has been your process? What has helped you?
Yeah, so I think that the greatest tool is self, right? So, and then our self-awareness, our kind of reflection, our reflexivity, our unpacking, delayering, and all of those things. And I think, again, one of my other sayings is you can't unknow what you know. So if you're in those moments and you know that the response you're giving, and it's not to say it's no judgment, because I've been there where I've given the satisfactory response because it's what people want to hear. But I've also known that I've then sat with the inner feeling of I didn't give the answer that was pleasing to me. And it's when we come to that position, and it's a journey of knowing that the answer needs to be pleasing to us. Now, I even know as I say that is controversial to some people, because why would it be about me? I'm not God, all of this. So therefore, it's, by doing things that are pleasing to you, all of that, right? Therein lies your downfall, Joe, So I know this to be true, but I'm still going to say it, right? Because we have to live with ourselves. We do. We have to live with ourselves every single day, day in, day out. We wake up with ourselves. We go to sleep with ourselves. Doesn't matter. We can look for external validation. So look, for me, the pure answer to that would be, as I think about it now, if my answer is to please the people that I'm sat with, that is not the right answer. Because, and actually, if your answer is because you truly, truly, truly within you know that, and even if you're in the space of pleasing God, and that is where the answer's coming from, then it's the right answer, isn't it? Because it's the answer that is satisfactory to you. It needs to be the answer that is satisfactory to you. Again, I think it's a journey. We have to feel the discomfort. I don't think there's shortcuts. I think there's lots of us, myself included, mentors, youth workers. I work with a lot of people that are helping people all the time. That's my daily, conversations. And I know that the majority of people, particularly when it comes to young people, or people who are vulnerable in whatever way, is to help them to not to have to go through what they went through, or to help them to not have to go through blah, blah, blah. And I agree with it, and I get it, and I understand it, and I align with it, but I also feel like some of this has to be lived. Some of this is a process that we cannot protect people from. We have to become sick of ourselves. Somebody posted about this on social media today, about becoming sick of yourself. That's the greatest turning point or something. I can't remember the exact words, but I agree. I was like, yeah, 100%. You know, because you can't unknow what you know. So when I'm sat there thinking, what are you saying? And this is just so not congruent. Then that's the time to revisit that language, those words, that belief system, that, you know, is that for you? What is that all about? Whose voice is that anyway? You know, and that goes back to ego and superego, right? The superego.
I do hear what you're saying. There are two things that kind of stand out to me. I'm just aware of time because we've gone on to 40 minutes now. But a couple of things that stand out to me, because I was writing yesterday. I'm getting into this habit, just started this habit of writing every day. And you know, it stirs up a lot because I've said it. I've actually said it out loud to people. This is now something I'm doing. And when it was something that was just in me, that, you know, just something that I was doing just for me, it was fine. But all of a sudden now I've kind of verbalized it. It's like I can feel like the weight of that. And so as I'm writing, I'm doing this writing, I type these words. I'm so tired of being tired. Do you know what I mean? That kind of place where, that kind of meta place where you kind of can see the pattern, you can see it. And I totally get what you mean, because there have been times, you know, in my childhood, one of my defense mechanisms, one of my coping mechanisms was to lie, you know, because my childhood environment, I felt very unsafe. And so when you feel unsafe, to protect yourself, you submit to that pressure. You say what you need to say in order to protect yourself, to make yourself feel safe. So I definitely understand that. And I think you kind of do have to get to that place where you kind of know, okay, I feel safe, but it comes at cost, and I'm no longer willing to tolerate the cost, the safety that I feel. It's not worth the cost, because I know that, especially when it comes to deconstruction, and I've spoken to people who may be like, they live in Bible Belt America, and, you know, for them, it feels very unsafe. You know, it can impact them personally, financially, it can impact their children. And so often it's like, it's something that they speak about in whispers. I can never experience that in the same way that they experience it. But I feel like I've experienced my own version of that, being a Black woman raised within African culture where you do Christianity in a particular way, and you've always done Christianity, and it's just something that is just going to be for time immemorial. You know, yes, it's not Bible Belt America, but it's still very, very real sense of oppression, sense of you do it this way. And I'm needing to become in the sense of feeling safe in myself enough to begin to express and articulate. And I think that's one of the reasons why I invited you, because I've watched you. I've observed you share, and I've watched other people share, and it's been so supportive of my own journey, because without you, without people like you who reached that point. And, you know, looking at it then, I maybe thought, oh gosh, you know, Joanna, she's like so brave, you know, she's doing this, or this person is so brave, and I wish I could. But hearing you speak now, I see the journey, I see the process. It wasn't that you kind of just went, rolled up your sleeves and went, yeah, I'm going to be brave and courageous today. I'm just going to go, you know, blah, and there you go, take that. It was really about you walking the walk. And eventually you got to that place where you were like, yeah, but no.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I had a conversation with someone just this morning about something completely different. And they said, oh, well, I'm going to let them know, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, don't let them know. You don't need to let them know. Just do it. Oh, yeah, okay. Now, you can just do it. And I said, just do the do. So it is about walking the walk. I think I tend to talk about things after I've done them rather than before or whilst doing. So that might be why it comes over that way as well, because I'm usually exiting the space when I'm talking about it. So I feel quite confident, you know. I think that's probably part of it. Also, Florence, I think there's a couple of things I want to say, and because I'm hearing what you're saying about people that are in it and how significant and big this is really. So I didn't grow up in anything staunch. And I think that probably makes a difference. So my delayering around religion is much more low-key, much less embedded, imbued in the fibre of me and my surroundings. There is less of a detachment, less of a cost to that detachment. So, I mean, I went to Sunday school. You know, all schools at the time when I went to school sang Christian songs in assembly. That was the norm. So Christianity was normalised within society. So I picked it up that way. As I say, I went to Sunday school. I seem to remember towards the end, as I got older, Sunday school meant lots of tea with as much sugar as I fancy because no one's stopping me. You know, that type of, so it's just that, you know, I can't, so there wasn't a sense of, I didn't have a sense of rightness or wrongness in the same way, in a lived way. The other thing that I'll say is, so I've gone in and out of church throughout my life. As a young adult, I've had people approach me. I've had people pick up that I'm not okay as well, I think, as I think about it, and invite me to their church. That is part of the reason why I don't engage with church in the way that I probably could, apart from the last church that I went to, because I've always felt that ego has been too big in the space for me. Like, you know, I'd be in the church quietly kind of trying to hear what's being said, take, you know, what is the learning here? What is this for me? What does this mean? You know, all of that. And then there'll be people bustling through to kind of, who invited you? Oh, you know, you're a new person, who invited? And I'm like, what is this? I'm not at a networking event. I'm trying to connect with God. So for me, there's always been a bit of well, not always. As I grew up, and I'm talking about 20s, 30s, I realised that that was something that I struggled with in the space. So I've gone to lots of churches, and whenever I picked up this, and I know that's not about God, that's about people, but the same people are saying certain things. But and again, it's incongruence. What I'm seeing is something completely different. And that for me is where my tolerance struggles. So then I will quickly evacuate the space like I would any other space where what I'm seeing is not what I thought it was going to be, and you know, no thanks, don't need to be here. And then I developed a sense of, so the process, I guess, I developed a sense of connectivity with God on my own terms, which again, I know contentious. Hello, think people can see that that's me, but it was that kind of connection. I pray. Do I pray religiously? Interesting turn of phrase. No, I pray. I speak to God. I speak to God like, you know, God, what is this? What is going on here? What is that all about? So God is my go-to person, right? Faction in my life. But it's like, it's in a different way. The last church I went to that church when I was going through a really difficult time in my life. And I would never betray the value of that space and the people I met there for helping me through what I was going through. So, you know, and, you know, God within that, they helped me to kind of connect with God in a way that helped me to survive, to navigate. So this isn't, for me, it's another saying of mine, there's no black and white, only grey. This isn't a straight. This is why my depends comes in. The other thing, I've just touched these. I carry crystals around my neck. I've got numerous different things. I know that gives a message to people. I went to visit a community building recently for some work I was doing as a bid writer, and it's a church-based space, and the guy is a missionary, and the guy that took me there is a pastor who I work with. Lovely people, got on really well. And the guy, I said something about working with what's in your hands and spoke about Eliza and the oil and what's in your house and where I took that from, a T.D. Jakes CD from my friend who goes to Hillsong gave me. I used to listen to on a loop in my car at one time. And the man said, oh, I wasn't sure of your spiritual leanings or whatever he said. I've been really mindful about my language, he said. And all I could think was, yeah, you've seen these and you're thinking what's going on, and you've seen however I have my hair, and there's a bit of a gypsiness about me sometimes, and I think it gives people a message. But it's all about signs and symbols, right? We're all living our identity and how we function in this world, because that is what we're doing. It's shortcuts. How are we understanding this world? We're making sense of messages. So people are making sense of messages about me all the time, and me, them, I guess, all the time, although I do try to question myself and say, hold on a second, but not everyone's doing that.
We've covered so much today. We've really, really covered so much. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the time, because, it's been so rich. And if somebody wants to connect with you to learn more about you, or to learn about the programs that you were speaking of right at the beginning, where can they go?
So I have my main Facebook page, I guess, Joanna Oliver. It's just that, Joanna Oliver, and you'd see me because I've got the hair going on my profile page. I think it stands out. I've also got Joanna Oliver Consult a Chameleon on Facebook, but it doesn't matter, either one. I'm quite fluid in the way that I speak about things in different spaces. Also, same on Instagram. I think that comes up. It's Consult a Chameleon on Instagram. So it's just at Consult a Chameleon. And LinkedIn, Joanna Oliver. And I think Twitter is Chameleon Joe. So whichever space people are in, those are the different
they
links.
can connect with you. Okay, that's been a perfect conversation, as I knew it would be. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Florence. I've actually really enjoyed it. Yeah, I could go on.
I know, that's why I have to stop it.
Yeah, stop.
Thank you for listening to Becoming You Beyond Deconstruction. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. You can connect with me on my Substack newsletter Unfolding to follow my journey and to find out, if you're interested, how we can work together. Go to my website, becomingbeyonddeconstruction.com. And if you're interested in supporting the work, then please feel free to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/livingfromsoul. My name is Florence Okwasogu, and I'll see you on the next episode of Becoming You Beyond Deconstruction.